So I'd like to call to order the February Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Board meeting. First order of business, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Wonderful. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Going to item number 3, Mr. Kramer. I'm going to keep it really short and sweet. In truth, I really appreciate you signing up and making a positive impact for the 3 years that you're here.
It's a good organization. Happy to serve. Thank you.
Of course. Last thing is what I'm going to miss is Matt's silence and then the most impactful statement here. So what I like about that is that he causes you to lean in, but then when he says something, it's extremely important. So I do appreciate that. That's the last comment on it. So wish you luck, buddy. Moving forward, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussions to clarify what was on the consent agenda?
One question I have on the budget, and I don't have it right in front of me, but we're at the beginning of a year, and I noticed there's a couple of things already essentially over now, like janitorial is one, I believe. Unless I saw that.
Yeah, you might have been looking, so we have both statements for both 2024 and 2025.
Maybe I didn't pay
So
attention.
you might have been looking at the 2024.
That makes sense. Okay.
Because we shouldn't be over.
Well, I'm a little curious already, but yeah, okay. You go chase that down here.
Oh, that is 2024. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we should be good for 20.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Leave it there.
Other questions, discussion topics? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Wonderful. Moving forward, it doesn't look like we have visitors. So I'm going to jump to the permit program. Thank you for popping this one out.
Good evening.
Yep, after you, Nicole. So I didn't see.
Yeah, we preemptively pulled this from consent. Ben was the permit applicant, but yeah, this is the only permit application that was ready to move forward this month. It's at Keller Regional Park. You might remember recently there was a permit. It was last year for an expansion of these Tulu courts that have been very popular. So this is in an effort to provide better parking, accessibility, and lighting for that general vicinity. So it's just kind of north and west of the Tulu courts.
I'll open it up. Well, we can start with the motion. Do we have a motion to approve, or would you like to ask questions now?
So move to approve.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any further discussions or clarification questions? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All aye. All abstained say abstain.
Abstain.
All opposed say nay. Perfect. Ben, your permit passes.
All right, thank you.
It was a very straightforward permit. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thank you as well. Yeah, as far as the enforcement report, we are still doing site inspections. You know, the sites aren't as busy, and but you know, there are some active sites out there still. I think the biggest thing of note this month was that Kendra and Mary were able to attend the Minnesota Erosion Control Association conference that was in St. Cloud. Sounds like they had some good sessions. They both attended pre-conference workshops, one related to wetland soils and then one related to our MS4 permit requirements. Sounds like there was a very energetic keynote speaker that was like a motivational life coach during one of the lunch or during the lunch session. So I wasn't there, but if you have any additional questions, I know Kendra's on here tonight too, or anything else about the enforcement report.
Personally do not have any questions. I'm interested in a life motivational coach. That sounds good.
Yeah, I did attend one year. There seems to be a theme for Mika that they just, it's not necessarily directly erosion control related a lot of the times. It's just really to like motivate you and energize you to do your job. So when I went a number of years ago, PJ Fleck was the keynote and he had the most energy of anyone I've ever experienced. But yeah, I don't know, Kendra, if you had anything to add about this particular, I think he was a fire chief for the city of St. Cloud and was just kind of playing lots of fun music and getting people up and out of their seats and stuff. And but I don't know if you have anything to add, Kendra.
Yeah, no, you covered it pretty well, Nicole. He was very energetic and he came to our table and got to know us and then shouted out someone at our table to dance with him. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, there was confetti. It was crazy. Definitely felt motivated after that.
I did not have any further questions of substance for this particular report.
I guess a small one, just kind of related to the conference. I'm just curious, this is probably an annual conference that we typically attended. Just curious.
Yeah. Yep. Usually at least one of, the permit staff attend, or, in this case, it was two of our staff this year. I feel like it's been in St. Cloud the last few years. I feel like they used to jump around a little bit more, but I've probably been, I don't know, half a dozen times. But yeah, it's a good conference and it's held every winter. Yeah, it's been in St. Cloud for a little while now.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Then I'll move us forward to the stewardship grant program. Is that Ashley? Okay.
Yep. Good evening. Pretty straightforward. We had 6 applications. 3 of them were on the consent agenda. You'll note that the reduction in maintenance grants, that is due to the 5-year lifespan of a chunk of them expiring. So we don't have to allocate those funds. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. I'll take any questions.
Could you say that again, Ashley? So the change between last month and this month is because we had some of those maintenance grants run into the 5-year?
Yep. So each maintenance grant is approved for 5 years. After that 5th year, we take it off whether or not they use the funds. So it's expired after the 5 years, and we had a decent little chunk from 2020 that expired.
Thank you.
A quick follow-up. I'm still trying to fully understand the maintenance grants and how they actually work. Do they have to be consecutive with the project itself having completed its maintenance phase? Or can there be an interlude so an applicant could come back and say, gee, I just wasn't able to keep up like I thought, and go ahead and apply for this to get some resources to bring on assistance? Can you clarify that?
Yep, they can take a break between the actual grant awarded project completion and then actually applying for a maintenance grant. We do have some folks who are like, I can do it. I'm going to do it. They're all gung-ho. And then either they change their mind or life happens and stuff happens. And so they realize maintenance is going to be a little bit more time intensive, more expensive. They have to outsource and contract it out. So we do see folks coming back a couple years in occasionally, but a lot do just go right from grant completion to the maintenance grant.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that too. For folks who have kind of gone through the maintenance grant, do we have any follow-up for those folks as to, do they continue to outsource, or in that time have they kind of figured it out? So do they take it on themselves?
From what I have seen, for the most part, of the 5 years, in general, contractors kind of set a 3-year maintenance plan up. So if they are outsourcing to a contractor, it's a 3-year plan. And so we do start to see the maintenance grants, reimbursement requests kind of die off after those 3-year marks. Some folks continue to do more maintenance, especially if they're adding projects to their property. And then they're tacking on more to the maintenance grant, but yeah, it kind of varies.
The primary reason for my question is I know, just wondering how well we're enabling folks to kind of do it themselves. So this came out of a conversation with someone on the South Washington watershed district. When they look at their stewardship grants, especially for the large organizations like churches or whatever, one of the things that they do look for as kind of the qualifiers is whether or not there is a volunteer organization, if there's a history of volunteering at that facility, so that it's not just someone expects, oh, it's a low maintenance rain garden or a native planting, and then it's not quite the same as mowing the lawn.
Yeah, we try to have those conversations up front with folks, especially when it is an organization, and kind of get a feel for what they think they can handle as maintenance and give them kind of recommendations of, hey, this might be more than what you're actually planning for in the planning process before they even get to the actual grant application. So the conservation district staff do a great job in the technical site visits, letting landowners, whether those are organizations or individual single family homes, kind of giving them this is what this project is going to kind of look like. So yeah, and we do incorporate it into the application of a consideration for, have they considered maintenance and how do they intend to approach it.
Like that.
Very good. Further questions on the stewardship grant programs, specifically the budget status update? Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you.
Move forward. I don't think, yes, action items. We are going to jump that one. Is that fair? Moving to you, Tracy, attorney report. You were busy this month, huh?
Well, pretty quiet, actually, I think.
Oh, really?
Well, we got a couple of the Fish Creek easements recorded. We didn't hear from the third person. Of course, we're not surprised by that, but we did not receive any response. We did look into a little bit on a payment bond just because we're concerned about a sub on the Target project not getting paid. I haven't followed up with that since I got back in town. I don't know, David, if you had a follow up with that, but so we did a little bit of investigating just to make sure that all that gets done and that there's no liability of the watershed district. And we're kind of working on an access agreement, making sure that that form gets tightened up a little bit. And really, that's about it.
I did have just a brief question on the third property owner. I know this, we've talked about, his or her lack of response. I don't really understand the protocol if that individual landowner decides to resist or try to prevent things from happening. What is the typical process after that? I just don't know.
Well, I just would need to make sure our rights are right, correct, that we have the right for the access that we, would need. If we needed further access, we can't go there unless we do a condemnation action, right? So I think it's really about making sure we are within our own parameters, and then really we have lots of tools, right? We can, bring some actions against them. Sometimes it's a restraining order, sometimes it's a cease and desist or an injunction kind of action. So we have really a lot of authority if we can show that that is an area of which we have the right to be on. If we don't have the right area, if we don't have access the way we need it, we need to take action to show why it's in the public good. And then we'd probably have to do some kind of condemnation, pretty significant. So, Tina, I would turn to you on how much we really need that third person. I've kind of had the impression that we can get by without it.
No, talking with the bar staff team too, it seems like we have enough easement already, but like you said, let's just make sure we're ironclad on the area that we do have, and we'll make sure that we're designing within that.
And frankly, I'm not worried. About the situation given earlier talks. I don't know what happens, honestly. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel good about our due diligence to contact them and make sure that they are aware of the certified, letters. So, I don't think they could say they weren't aware of the work that we're trying to do.
The number of updates that said, reached out again.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Any other questions for Tracy? Okay, board discussion topics. I just had one thing to say. Thank you, Mark. I think Stephanie, you've summarized the conference really well. Ben, I was hoping, do you have some notes?
Got to get those notes in.
Yeah, just send them our way. I think it'd be nice as we think forward and plan out as Bar, Tina, and staff plan out the workshop. It'd be nice just to have some of those high level thoughts. Kind of what I'm thinking. So thank you very much. That's really the only ask is when I summarize it, I'll probably send something to Tina and we can distribute it. You guys can, if I captured or summarized inappropriately, you can correct if you don't mind, and we'll go from there.
Speaking of the board workshop for the watershed management plan, we do have all the votes are in. It looks like February 24th or 26th. So as long as the 26th, we can plan for that. That's February 24th. Again, it would be like a 5 to 7 time frame with dinner. But let me know if there's any concerns. I know that was a little bit ago that you filled out that form too. So,
do you think the new board member would be willing to join us?
Yeah, I reached out to her and she seemed like all the dates worked for her. So
okay,
we should be good on that.
Eric, maybe if we can bake in introduce each other type of.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Wonderful. So there are 4 really, really good new reports and presentations that I wanted to make sure we did get to and spend some time talking through. I don't know if I pass it to Paige or do I pass it to?
Well, I'll just start out by saying we don't have any
good.
formal presentations on any of them, but we can walk through them, each one of them, and answer any questions you might have, or if you need more time, we can certainly push it to the next month too, and with any questions. But yeah, we'd start with the street sweeping, and Paige would be and Aaron both will.
Before we walk through, do you want to just start with questions, or would you like just to walk through? I just wanted to ask. I know I have some prepped questions, but I didn't know if others. What was your preference?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were going to have a presentation. I don't have any prepped questions. There are a couple of things that I was kind of curious. So I think we can proceed with the discussion.
Yeah, perfect. So. High level, you just want to walk through high level.
Yeah, for the street sweeping?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, I think after last year, we confirmed that this is a great program. It's a cost-effective way to, help clean things up, and our cities were excited about it. We had at one point allocated all the funding. You'll see in there that the city of St. Paul had a little, mistake on their end where they did 90% of the street sweeping in Cap region. So we did not pay for that portion, but So that's where, I mean, you'll see we allocated 100,000 for them, but they only requested 10,000, so.
Did Cap Region end up paying for the street sweeping?
They
Okay,
don't
so
have a
St.
program in
Paul.
place at this point, yep, so it was St. Paul. Yeah, Cap Region's working on that, and they actually completed a study with BAR. So now St. Paul has, I believe it's finalized, but I think now St. Paul has their full study, so hopefully we can work with Cap Region to help. I know that for
I
next
can only
year, but.
imagine how that planning meeting went. We got $100,000, so we
Yeah.
can only use $8,000 of that.
Wrong. Yep. So, yes, but every other district went well, or city went well. Contract out for White Bear Lake again, which I think will, Ashley's gonna work on, application for this year. Last year was kind of informal where we reach out to the cities like, hey, let us know what you need. But I think this year we'll have a set deadline where they need to apply, so then we can get the funding approved. For spring, summer and fall sweepings, and then, look at other opportunities if cities come in and want to. Like City of Roseville had some unique requests with their intern and some additional monitoring they did, and we'd like to support those types of things. Yeah, Erin, I don't know if there's any other.
I think, there's some information, some data in here about, page is that?
Right.
Page 6, when, City of Roseville, collected samples and tested it for content, and they, Michael was able to compare that to what would have been predicted with the PCA street sweeping phosphorus credit calculator, and found that they were relatively
cool.
similar, which was cool to see, actually.
I really like that practice of going back and just double checking.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I mean, because that street sweeping calculator is getting some pretty heavy use, and so it was, I thought that was nice to see that validated. Granted, a small sample size, but I liked that was done.
May I ask some
Yeah.
questions on table 3? I know at the watershed conference and other conversations, could you this is more just a refresh, could somebody remind me of that graphic or the distribution of TP per dollar amount?
Oh, sure, yeah, that would have been nice to have in here. Right, so when we look at, so you're looking at that TP recovery cost per pound, these are really low.
That's what I
They're
seem to
very,
recall, I
very
just couldn't
low.
remember where the mean was, and that's
Yeah.
why I was at.
Yeah, I mean.
I took a note to look it up, I know it's
Yep.
another board packet. I think.
Yeah, and you'll start to see that graph out more regularly when we're bringing new projects forward, so
Yeah.
that'll get more ingrained. And something that we'll update every year. But what we typically have found, I think the number right now is that most of the district's projects are like $10,000 or $11,000 per pound per year. With certainly outliers on both ends, but this is very, very low. Now, one could argue like this is really coarse material, like this is stuff that, in some cases might be removed downstream through wetlands and ponds, so we can talk about whether or not it's apples to apples.
Yeah.
But regardless, I mean, these
great.
are very low. So what we've concluded time and again is that like, it's kind of a no-brainer. It only helps. And yes, it doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything downstream ever. You will still need to do that, but that it's,
Feels close to preventative. Yeah.
Yeah, it is preventative.
Yeah, at the source.
Can you help me understand the White Bear Lake situation? I know that we worked closely with them based off the report and then earlier conversations to help establish the relationship for sweeping, but yet they didn't report any materials collected.
Yes, so that is the contractor that we hired. And I don't know why, but for some reason he says that he collects the weights, but we haven't gotten them the last 2 years, so. So that's nothing on the city, that is, I don't know. Like, it's an inexpensive contractor, he does a great job, he's easy to work with, but we have yet to get those weights, so we'll do another kind of RFP for that this year.
Yeah, because I know they re-upped, aren't they?
Yeah.
I guess that was the question that I did have. I wasn't sure with the discussion, but did we specifically state in the contract with them that that was something that we expected?
Yes.
We have not.
Yes.
Yeah. Haven't gotten it, so, okay.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that's more
And
clear and maybe withhold, like say we won't
And that was a contractor with White Bear, was landfall, because they didn't report it either, was that?
Right,
a different
actually,
Contractor, same.
no, that
contractor?
was a city, so they managed that one. I don't quite remember why, if they just didn't have that or we didn't get it from them. and stuff, but yeah, most of them are good about getting it, yeah, well, then Roseville was a different case, but yes, so we'll make sure that's clearer this time around.
And to continue building on, because I really like the recommendations, as I look at this, we had identified certain streets that we thought would be of benefit to sweep. I recall. As you worked with the cities or got report backs, did they follow those recommendations? And if so, are the numbers, maybe this is too granular, but are the numbers more so on those recommended streets or just all inclusive sweep?
Yeah, most of them, well, I think all of them did all inclusive sweeping. City of St. Paul they all have those priority area maps, yes. But they had time and funding to do the whole, or we had funding
Oh,
to
understood. Okay, so
do the whole thing. So that's why White Bear Lake, they swept more than what we originally funded because they were able to do the whole city.
I mean, that's totally great. I think that makes a lot of sense. I want to ensure, and maybe if I ask more directly, the recommended street areas, they did cover those.
They did.
Okay, cool.
Correct, yep.
Very good.
Yep.
And were they not able to do the spring seed drop early on?
Some cities did, yes. So I think most of them started in May. Yes.
I just saw that as one of your recommendations, is to make that available. So I was just wondering. why
Yes.
They didn't.
Yes, so some of them did it maybe outside of our grant window, and that's where this year we're going to make sure that they can get those applications in and have the funding so that we can offer an additional spring sweeping. Thanks.
I really like the idea, one of your recommendation bullet points, but comparison of materials collected by different sweeper types, combinations of sweepers. I don't know how much data is out there of those kind of variables, or are we kind of breaking new ground or not so?
With the information we collect,
Asking for a better understanding of different sweeper types, different
Sure.
sweeper regimes, timing, all
yeah,
those kinds of things, because there is a fair amount of literature out there. I'm not really
Yes.
familiar with it, but I'm just curious. Have others looked at that so that we'd have some,
yeah.
potential understanding?
Yep, I know for each city, we know what equipment they have. I don't know how Michael factors that in to all of these numbers, but we know all of that. So we have that and, know when they kind of keep us surprised of when they update things, mainly because they're asking for funding for that. So
Sure.
we know about that, but, I'll have to ask Michael about
Yeah,
how we can better factor that in.
and you're right. I mean, I think there has been research done on that. I think the recommendation for that here is that there's a lot of data that can be collected in your backyard as you're doing this program. So, yeah, so it's not a brand new idea, but you have sweepers running all over the place, so you may as well keep track of differences in that
Right, I
way.
guess what I'm trying to, some of the data, and I'm not familiar with the literature, I just know that literature exists. Maybe Vermont has done a couple studies,
Right.
just hypothetically,
Yeah.
and they found this, and this. And because we're in a different region,
Right.
we don't necessarily expect to see the same kinds of
Right,
things. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of design of our data, Obviously, we want to get the money out there, we want to get the sweeping done, but I think we also want to have a better understanding going forward, because it seems like this is like a no-brainer. We ought to continue doing this, but how can we really improve it?
Yeah.
And part of that is really getting a fuller understanding and data analysis.
Yeah,
I think that, like you said, those bullet points under continue to support innovative uses, that's where we'll continue to collect that and synthesize it into that.
yeah. And I think that's an important one too for a lot of our cities that are meeting those baseline requirements or exceeding that. And so if there's a way that we can still help them improve, still focus, yeah.
And one more, because this question came off the top of my head here. The target or priority areas or streets that we asked them, what was the basis of that? What was the basis? Was it PMDLs, or we wanted to pair with other practices that we were doing, or it was in, DEI type areas? What was kind of the basis? We probably talked about this before.
Yeah,
but I
it was
remember.
based on water quality and,
Tree cover.
yeah, tree cover
Yep.
and
Okay.
closeness to water
Intersection of
resources.
tree cover with impervious surfaces. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there probably was, a TMDL nod to that too, if I
Yes.
remember correctly.
Yeah, because it looked at what resources.
Yeah, there were a couple of
were
impaired waters that
connected to.
kind of influenced the article.
Yep.
I like that approach. I'm kind of curious if those would, I assumed that those are going to still be recommended areas in the future.
Mhm.
But I'd love to see some of those water bodies to build on the data collection mechanisms. I don't know or recall, so correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think we do water quality checks in some of those bodies that were in the priority areas. I'd love to see if there's correlations
Like over time.
over time.
Yeah.
First year, probably not a correlation, right?
Yeah.
So, but as you think about the outcome, having some of that data so we can correlate kind of what Mark's saying, we can figure out, oh, there's some better ways to do it. That's something I didn't see called out, but I think it would be really great knowing that we are collecting some of that data.
And that data will go into the TMDL reporting.
Yeah.
For those.
Yep.
impaired water bodies.
Like the data's there, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's like, we just gotta put it together.
So pure curiosity question, if I remember correctly, a lot of this started with, in the Madison area. And just, it's not that far away, but just wondering if, besides us, besides the Ramsey-Washington, who else is doing what and what have they learned? I don't know if you've heard.
As far as like other, kind of to Val's point of call.
Yeah, well, no, in
Yeah.
terms of efficiencies, what should they do?
Yeah.
What's.
Yeah, I know a lot of the metro watersheds, like Cap Region, they finished their study. Rice Creek is, I think they finished their study, Coon Creek is doing one, so we're, I would say ahead with doing the grants. South Washington has been doing grants for a while, they had their report right before us. So I think around here, it's getting bigger and more popular. I don't know about outside of Minnesota, I don't keep up with that very much, other than, yeah.
Just curious.
It's
Thank you.
nice. It's nice being, starting a movement, that's good.
Yeah, it would be interesting. So a lot of us actually came from Sarah Hobby's work out of the University of Minnesota. So it would be interesting to check back in with her and Professor. I'm forgetting his name now, Larry Baker.
Larry
Baker.
I think so. That sounds right.
Anyway, it'd be good to check back in with them too and see if they're tracking kind of how this is being used, how their study is being used, because that's what came out of the calculator.
No, this is maybe a secondary benefit, but the street sweepers also have opportunities to remove garbage. Is that a fair conclusion? And is there any metrics around? I just don't know. Is this another area? Not that we need to add more data collection. I'm just curious. There's secondary benefits, keeping the streets clean. Once phosphorus, that isn't our that's our job. But I do imagine specifically having cleaned up garbage along streets that I live in, that there are good collection sites, I would say, or big collections of garbage. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I know some cities have, or maybe it's the disposal sites, but they have the, like the sifter or the screener, so they can pull out some of that trash. I don't know how.
I was curious if it was a thought.
Yeah, well, we know that a lot of cities, when they have strong street sweeping programs, mostly in their downtown areas, it's because of trash pickup or cleanup, something else. Yeah.
Be interesting to see what Cap Region sees.
Yeah.
Right. Last thing, it did surprise me that Roseville used the grants to support an internship. I'm not against it, but it just surprised me. Is that something we'll encourage?
It was a unique request. They approached us, they wanted to have an intern specifically looking at how to improve street sweeping, looking at different methods, doing this testing. So we thought it was a good use. They're one of the cities that exceed the
Yeah.
baseline parameters at this time, and as Aaron said, you know, the data was useful for us as well.
Okay.
And we were able to meet with that intern and provide her with a lot of our information, kind of guide some of what she did. But I don't know that it'll be an ongoing thing for them. I
Yeah,
think
that's
it was
kind
a
of what I was kind
one-time.
of curious.
Yeah,
like,
I think that was a one-time thing.
Not that I'm against hiring. Yeah, it is a very low commitment. It just surprises me, or it surprises me. I did not have any further questions. How about others? I'm really excited to keep this going. And how much?
Yeah, I guess I would just like to reiterate, it would be helpful, it would be good to see the data as they are pulled together, as they come together. I think that this is something that, as I said before, it's a no-brainer. I would like to continue to see it happen, but I think it could be improved. I think we're at a point where we need to have better understanding, and so I would echo, we really should look at that data.
Yep.
In a serious way.
See publication, possible other things. Very cool. Thank you for including this. This was good. Alum treatments.
Yeah, this was a project update for you. As we talked amongst ourselves, we realized if things are gonna be happening kind of quickly, and we wanna make sure that you're up to date on what's going on. I don't know, Erin, if you wanna give kind of the latest update.
Sure, so yeah, so Coleman Lake, as you recall, so did I print that one? There was such a tech heavy board packet today that I actually printed some of the memos. This one I think I have it there. Yeah, so Coleman Lake, as you recall, got an alum treatment in 2010. And before we did that alum treatment, there was some pretty intensive management of the macrophytes in the lake, because there was both Eurasian water milfoil, quite a lot of it, and also quite a lot of curly leaf pondweed. Curly leaf pondweed, as you probably know and remember, is particularly nasty because not only is it invasive, but it dies back in the middle of the summer and releases phosphorus into the water column. So it's sort of a double hit. It has a direct impact on water quality. So a lot of management was done in the lake, full lake macrophyte treatment, which necessitated the creation of a lake vegetation management plan approved by the DNR. We did that first, and then commenced with some alum treatments, and then spot treatments for years after that of the curly leaf pondweed. And what happened then is the water quality greatly improved significantly, and between that and then the slow implementation of projects throughout the watershed, the lake had a really nice long period of about 13 years or so of being pretty darn clear, and came off the impaired waters list. What we've been watching, because we knew that internal load or the alum treatment would erode over time, and we knew this is what happens with alum treatments, they're not forever. So we've been watching, and I think the lake was taken off the impaired waters list like 2 years ago or something. And now we're watching the water quality, and as you've seen it started to degrade, and there's been a lot of sediment cores taken. Program and Bill Bartogier was doing, and the verdict was, okay, it's time for another alum treatment. So we've been looking at the macrophytes again in the lake. Now, in recent years, there's been a homeowner association that's done some pretty intensive treatment of the lake. You can treat up to 15% of a lake's littoral zone without doing a lake vegetation management plan that's approved by the DNR. And the homeowners have been doing that pretty religiously. So we thought it might be possible that leading up to an alum treatment in the spring of this year, we might not have to do a whole lot of macrophyte management. In fact, we were a little bit worried that maybe there was a little too much macrophyte management before. But what we found when we looked at the data that's been collected this last year is that on the positive side, there's not much Eurasian water milfoil in the lake, which is wonderful, but there is significant curly leaf pondweed, and you see that chart or that graphic in the memo showing where, which parts of the lake the curly leaf pondweed has been observed. So it's, you know, it's a little more than 15%, it's less than 50%. It's possible that we could be treating curly leaf pondweed and stay under that 15%. It's possible that a better approach is to do a full vegetation management plan in conjunction with the DNR. We're still kind of noodling that over. Regardless, we have done some checking on availability of alum applicators, and they are booked up. We've only checked with one company, and it's possible that this project would be expensive enough to have to go out to public bid. So there may be other companies that would bid, but we're starting to think that we may need to kick this out a year and spend this year instead wrapping our heads around what to do about the macrophytes in the lake. So we are still, I think we say at the end here, we're planning to have a meeting with the DNR staff. There's a group of folks that we met with from, I think it was Ramsey County and the DNR, like a year and a half ago, to talk about the lake, and they seemed very supportive of another alum treatment. They seemed supportive of and knowledgeable that the macrophytes were something that we'd have to factor in. So it seems like it's time to meet with them again and see what the DNR thinks about this and come up with a plan altogether. And then that would kind of lay the next steps for timing. As I said, we did reach out to one of the alum applicators that have done a lot of metro lakes, and they are booked until next spring. But we can still make steps to prepare for the alum treatment. We have collected other sediment cores that we have evaluated. We can design the dose we think we're going to need. We can get the contract documents all set up and ready. I think at the time of writing this memo, I think I said it's possible you'd see something next month. That feels less and less likely, but we will be meeting with the DNR sometime within the next month to help set next steps. So regardless, you'll hear more at the next meeting about what's planned. But we did want to put this out in front of you so that you kind of start thinking about these topics. We haven't talked as this board about an alum treatment before, so you'll probably have a lot of questions, and we'll need to bring you along with that as well as macrophyte management. So
I recall.
Yeah.
I was, in terms of meeting with the DNR, that sounds fantastic. In terms of what that discussion might involve, obviously herbicide is one way of controlling curly leaf. I think there are some challenges with harvesting it. It might fragment and increase. But other than herbiciding and potentially just doing surveys to get a much better understanding of density and location, what more would we maybe want to do or possibly do?
I mean, and there were pretty intensive surveys done last year.
Yeah.
So we have fresh data on that. Honestly, I mean, that's one of the reasons for meeting with the DNR to see if they're, if they have any other thoughts or feelings. This looks like an herbicide treatment approach to me, to be honest. I mean, that doesn't mean we're not considering other things, but as you say, you can't really pull this stuff out. You can't cut it off with a harvester. You gotta kill it. So I think one question, an important one, is how much of it do we do? Like, you see in that map that it's kind of the heaviest stuff and the most cohesive growths are in that northern portion. So there is a pathway where you could kind of aggressively spot treat in there, keep it under that 15%, and not do a whole lake look and just kind of keep doing spot treatments. I think that's a viable option. The other thing is, there's different options in terms of how frequently to do those treatments. There's also questions about timing of an alum treatment and frequency in terms of, like, do you do 2 small ones? Do you do 1 big one? And what does that look like in conjunction with those options you have for macrophyte management? But yeah, I mean, at this point, my main questions for the DNR would be about, I think it's probably going to ultimately be a discussion about herbicide treatment. But if they have concerns about that, if they have other ideas, by all means, that's why we would talk with them.
Can I build on Mark's question? So
Yeah.
I had something similar. I recall the presentation earlier where we were shown images of that lake over time. And now that we've gone through and we see that Eurasian water milfoil isn't the presence, can one assume that the growth that we've seen in terms of plant life or macrophytes in those pictures are just curly leaf pondweed, or are there other things there?
Well, I think that there's other things too, and I don't know that we
There's a
put
lot
that
of
data in
codes
there.
So I did,
Yeah.
for this one, I went back and looked at the presentation
Yeah.
before, because they had images over time.
Yeah,
And so as I don't recall the same definitive conclusion in terms of no Eurasian water milfoil
yeah,
mostly, and so it just made me curious.
yeah,
Because my question is around the growth curve of how much of the area for curly pondweed
Yeah.
we've seen, and is it at a point where spot treat is
Right.
manageable, or is it an all treat thing? Like,
Right.
did it go from 0 to 28% coverage in a year or two?
sure,
That to me seems more of like a substantial, we gotta treat the lake as
Yeah.
opposed to the
Yeah.
spot, so I'm just curious.
yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I think unfortunately, what's been going on in the lake over the last several years is a lot of spot treatments going on from the homeowners. And I don't mean, unfortunately, I'm not drawing a judgment on their treatment of the lake, but what I mean is from a data set perspective,
So it's
looking at
skewing
growth,
the-
there's other forces that have been at play. I mean, I think,
When I was thinking about like
Yeah.
riparian rights, right, they're going to treat what's in front of them.
Mhm.
So as I looked at the dots that are more clear on your screen, they, it to me intuitively makes sense there's more in the middle,
Mhm.
since it's all littoral, right? So I'm just kind of curious. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to make sure as you guys weigh your options with the DNR,
Yeah.
if that growth curve is substantial, you
Yep.
would think that you'd want more of a systemic treatment.
Right, because
So-
there's a trajectory going on. Yeah, and I think that is actually another important question for the DNR is what records they have about the treatments that have happened from the homeowners.
Yeah.
Like what was their understanding of where and how much? So, I don't know if they have, I don't know what's required of the homeowners to submit before they do that, but that's a question I have as well, is what they know about how much treatment was happening. The other thing that, I mean, I should mention about Coleman Lake and alum treatments is that the other thing that we're struggling with here is that curly leaf aside, I mean, we're talking about curly leaf because there's a water quality component. Coleman Lake is 100% littoral.
Mhm.
So that means Coleman Lake has the potential to grow macrophytes everywhere in the lake. So one of the things that happened last time and will happen again is we will clear up the water column. And we will, ideally, the best case scenario, really, from the lake's perspective, is that we get a diverse population of macrophytes for habitat. And that's in tension with public use. And so there's been a history of that struggle in this lake. We did see a big resurgence of coontail in this lake after the last alum treatment, and people were not particularly happy. But we also really cleared up the water column, and then we saw more diverse plants coming in as well. So
Yeah, I remember that one.
It's a
from
tension,
that-
yeah.
That, like you said, that tension that arose
Yep.
last time, and so I guess the question is, at what point in time do you start engaging the local residents?
yeah, and there's, the residents around this lake and around some of the lakes in the chain have been very, very engaged, and so I think that is part of the year as well, is to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and we've already been engaging with the Coleman.
KSGK.
group.
KGSK.
Yes.
Yeah. Coleman.
Is that a
Jarvis
joint
School.
Yeah.
lake association?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, because it seems,
For
it'd
the
be good to
treatment,
talk to
yeah.
the DNR about
Yeah.
herbicide, but I bet they would be more in tune with the herbicidal treatments.
Well, the DNR knows what
Yeah.
they.
Okay.
So we've been in a lot of conversations with all
Yeah.
parties involved
good.
about a number in Coleman Lake and treatment of
Yeah.
macrophytes. So we've been at the table together, we've been talking about it, and at least the representatives that we've been talking to, they're very supportive of another alum
Yeah.
treatment.
They are, yeah. Yeah.
That is something that they have supported, but I agree that we need to walk this through.
Yep.
So that they're understanding, what we're gonna do. And we also need to discuss what we wanna do to help support that diverse population of
Right.
macrophytes, so.
Yep.
That was a follow-on question. So have we entertained doing proactive planting? Are there plants that would help us more so? I'm not plant expert by any means, but I think I read somewhere that duckweed is helpful in some instances, not all. And so I just am curious if we looked at a proactive planting of like purposefully in that way.
I think that should come as part of this process.
It
I think
would,
we'll should talk about
Mhm.
what options.
What
we
other
might have
options?
for that.
Yeah, once the, yeah.
If there's anything we can do to help influence some more diversity.
I was gonna ask, what is the term limit on the VLMP? It's been a decade since that last one.
It's
Was-
it's
'cause I-
expired.
To me,
Yeah.
yeah, but to me,
Yep.
it just seems like even if we're gonna do a spot treatment, it's better to be proactive than reactive and mobilize multiple years in a row and understand really what we're doing. So it seems like it sets us up for that.
Yeah, yeah, that's the purpose.
Mhm.
Yep,
So are those good for 5 years, 10 years?
it's, is it in here? I can't remember. We just looked this up. I think it's 10.
I think 10.
I think Ben brings up a really good point. That is definitely a note I took. It feels LBMP is the way to go regardless, whether or not we do spot or not. But
Mm-hmm.
that's at least a conclusion I drew reading this.
Yep.
Taking a little bit different direction and building off or picking up on Val's question about, you know, a more directed plant management, planting or whatever. It seems most of the attention, probably understandably, but has been on the open water basin, the lake. And there's a significant amount of the emergent community to the north and to the east. I'm guessing a lot of that's cattails. But the ability for that to communicate and exchange within the lake, have we really ever looked at that and how that functions in kind of a larger lake system?
That is a good question for me to ask around the bar. I haven't personally, but,
Because I'm guessing, I'm driving 61 and whatever the road to the south. It sure seems like there's a lot of cattail that is probably accumulated litter and probably is a huge reservoir for phosphorus. And I don't know if we even have an understanding of kind of hydrology works from a groundwater related standpoint. You know, what is the role of that? We maybe shouldn't just be ignoring it.
I know that Keith and Bill had done some studies of cattail, potentially cattail harvesting, as I recall, a while ago.
Well, yeah, looking at removal.
Yeah. That was more of like using that as a BMP.
And then, did we ever record that? Do we know what kind of concentrations it might have?
I mean, I think if I remember the conclusions of that study, it was basically, it's possible you can remove phosphorus by removing cattails, but you know, there's trade-offs. And it wasn't I think the conclusion was it's a tool. It's not, it won't take the place of an alum treatment.
Sure.
Or other kinds of BMPs, but, and as far as, you know, the impact of a large cattail community on the north side of the lake and what that could do to the rest of the lake, it would be a great DNR question.
Right.
I'll add it to our list.
Yeah.
And it's 5 years for the LPMP.
Is it 5?
It's 5.
Okay, yeah.
So I'll try and honor your comment earlier of at least something, if not potentially insightful, I will say horrifically depressing. And as I read this, I wanted to at least ask the question, why are we doing anything? We, you know, you've got, the patient has cancer. We spent a lot of money 15 years ago. We're going to spend a lot of money now. You've introduced a lot of variables that we have no control over. Whatever you remove through a herbicide application, it's not 100%. And so it's going to start responding immediately, and 15 years from now, we'll spend more money. And I'm genuinely concerned as a Ramsey County taxpayer that the collapse of the commercial property tax base, certainly in the core downtown, but also in Washington County that affects our property tax, is going to have a significantly negative manifest impact on property tax levies. And this institution, along with others, mosquito control district, et cetera, is going to pay the price for that. And so when I looked at this, I went, okay, in the grand scheme of everything that we'd like to do, how important it is to tee up a treatment
Mhm.
that reading this and with your expertise, I think that I would be willing to bet my home mortgages that 15 years ago or from now or late or
Mhm.
sooner, we'll be having the exact same conversation
Mhm.
again.
Yeah,
And so
Yeah.
you don't have to answer that because I don't think there is an answer.
sure.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, we did it in 2010. We would be doing it again. I do think that, I mean, another way to look at that, I suppose, is that alum treatments, control of internal load, particularly with alum, are one of the most, if we're talking about cost per pound, and it's really tricky to compare in-lake treatments next to watershed BMPs, but it is highly effective. It is not permanent, for sure. But if we are trying to keep lakes at a point where they can be clear water, macrophyte dominated versus algal dominated, and if we're trying to do something about minimizing harmful algal blooms, which is another piece of the equation here, alum treatments are pretty effective as an option. Your point's valid, though. I mean, it's not you do it and you're done.
no,
Yeah.
I
So-
understand.
So,
Yeah.
so kind of a riff off of Matt's comment. You have an active residential community who actively applies herbicides on their own. Would they share in the cost?
Well, in
It's-
fact, I'd go further than that. They're
How
doing it
would
on
it
their
cost?
own. They should pay for it.
I mean, I would say, yeah.
This lake is a private
It's theirs.
benefit to a relatively small. And
Except it is the start of a chain too, so it does impact
I
those three
understand.
resources, so that is one of the reasons why we have invested more into that. And we haven't done, special resource allocation of, like, special assessments. In the past, that doesn't mean that's not something that could be considered, in the future, but.
Because I have no idea how much they actually spend on their herbicide treatment.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's gotta be I don't know.
So the goals are different,
Yes, I understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
and they're treating both native and non-natives.
Yeah.
Um,
Just a thought.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Good, Gillette?
A quick follow-up. The mention of harmful algal blooms, do we have any record or observations of harmful algal blooms occurring here?
No, not that. I know.
Not that I know of in Coleman.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of macrophytes, probably has
Yeah.
always been a lot of macrophytes, I suspect they're sucking up a
Mhm.
lot of the,
Yeah.
phosphorus and just cycling, so
Mhm.
I don't know if there's a lot of with for harmful algal blooms.
Yeah, well, no, and I don't, yeah.
In this particular basin.
Right, yeah, it's just in the name of, if we're trying to keep phosphorus levels within a concentration in the lakes that keep them off the impaired waters list, and that's a different discussion, But if that's the goal, and if we're doing that to support as healthy a community as possible, I mean, this is an urban lake, so everyone's got their heads on straight about that, but then for this kind of lake, this is a tool that gets on the table.
I was gonna highlight an earlier conversation when I was joining the board around return on investment for this alum treatment. I remember there was a pretty deep, detailed conversation. I don't remember all the details on it, so forgive me. But to what Matt's highlighting, I do think in the conversation there, we concluded that this had a high return on investment in terms of what our other options were.
Yeah.
Now, time's passed, so I am kind of curious about, there's probably some preventative things, partnering with the lakeshore owners. We've talked about lakeshore management, how we were looking at some of that. It is going to consistently be a problem. I don't think Matt's wrong at all
Right.
in that case.
Yeah.
But there are some new things that we're learning with some of these other areas that maybe it might be nice to trial it out with Coleman Lake as we have in other ways. But yeah, it sounds like you have potentially up to a year, depending on if you can find an alum treater, where
Yeah.
there are some data elements that would be really, really nice just to continue to collect. So we go into it with eyes wide open.
One thing, I don't remember remember Keith did that study on internal load management options, where he looked at different district lakes.
That's when I was
Can't
recalling that there
remember.
was an
someone else
ROI.
was on the board
I think.
at that time.
Pullman, he talked about
Okay.
Pullman and Wakefield.
Yes,
Wakefield
right, and so that was the
aeration
distinction of why we went down aeration with Wakefield, but that
Mhm.
alum treatment was the best.
Yeah, it had to do with the sediment.
I wanna say that was about a year ago.
Was it just a year ago? Okay.
And we've revisited alum treatments, to your point earlier, a few times, because I remember in my first year in the board, there was a big passionate conversation about it, and that's where the ROI stuff started coming through. And so,
Yeah.
Again, it's challenging to data mine it back, and I apologize, I don't have it off the cuff, but
Wow.
I think it's a really good thing just to go back and revisit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think our first step anyway is to meet with the DNR and understand, you know, the trajectory of those macrophytes, as well as we can, and do some more evaluation of the data we've collected on sediment cores to get a sense of what would an alum treatment look like if that was what we did? What would macrophyte management look like if that's what we did? What would a vegetation management plan look like? How do we engage with the homeowners? All those things. That would be the nature of this year's work.
And pencils in on the schedule just in case.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a
Exactly.
really good discussion. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to get too nerdy. Any further questions on Coleman? Because the next one, I feel like we've forced and asked Bart to do because of conversations
Oh,
at a
we
watershed
Wanted
conference,
to do it, yes.
but I have lots of questions on
Yeah.
C, so after you.
Yeah. Well, so should we move on?
Is that okay with folks?
Aeration.
Yeah, so this, this topic, was a hot one at the Minnesota Watersheds Conference because the nanobubble folks, Molier was there. And they were, they gave some presentations, they had a booth that was really compelling. And it brought out a lot of interest, and it wasn't just you all. I mean, a lot of our watershed clients, have been asking questions about this. And so we thought, well, let's do a deeper dive and look at that technology, because a lot of the materials that they had there, they had case studies, but they weren't peer-reviewed research.
I was gonna ask about that. Okay,
Mhm,
so
we
is the
haven't found a
one,
lot. It's newer. I mean, that's not a knock on them. It's a newer thing.
yeah,
We
because they
do
were
have-
handing out pamphlets, of case study after case study of
Yeah.
big lakes versus small lakes versus
Yeah.
deep lakes.
Yep, and those aren't,
That's
they're
not
case
a,
studies, it's not peer reviewed. So it's hard to assess that, right? It's hard to know, and sometimes the length of time that the lakes were evaluated was not very long, and, it wasn't always clear like how this evaluation was constructed. And again, I'm not bad mouthing their company. It just is nice when you have peer reviewed research, because then you can feel like it's been vetted. And the other thing is, we thought we should probably present a description of what that technology is, along with a few others. And you've seen some of this before. I mean, some of this information we've put out before in other memos, but we thought we'd put them all out there just to get at some basics. Some frequently asked questions that we hear and that, you can look up in the literature, and then kind of characterize each of these. We just showed 4 different types, but there's essentially 2 different sort of families of technologies. So, yeah, kind of a deep read. We tried to, load it up with references. Some of these things are from the company's websites and those case studies, but a lot of it is stuff that we know about from the literature. And we did have Keith Pilgrim and Joe Bischoff on our staff look through this and provide guidance. They have a lot of experience with these kinds of things. So this went through a number of people at BAR. So I guess the only other thing I'll mention is the thing about aeration is that it can sometimes be put out there like it's going to fix everything. And there's some parts of that have some basis in science and that can be true. And there's some things that we can't really substantiate. And so we did our best to lay some of those things out. The other thing that we mention in here is the different kinds of technology. So one kind of aeration is artificial circulation, where you are physically using bubbles to move water from the bottom of a lake to the top so that it can get aerated at the surface. It's not that those bigger bubbles are gonna be able to push oxygen out in the water column, but they can move water to the surface. And so you're artificially mixing a lake. That's one type of aeration. And the other one is direct oxygen injection. And so there's two different things that we have presented in here. One is this, let's see, what is it? Side stream oxygenation, where water is pulled through a chamber with oxygen in it and then put back into the lake. And then the other one is the nanobubbles, which is oxygenation as well, because the assertion is that, these are tiny, tiny bubbles that as they rise, well, for one thing, they rise very slowly, if at all, in the water column, and then oxygen can diffuse out into the water. So that's not about circulation, it's about oxygen getting into the water. These are all things that Keith looked at specifically with respect to, I think it was Bennett and Wakefield Lake a couple of years ago. Again, some of these studies are starting to slosh together in my head. But he looked at these technologies, nanobubbles and this side stream.
Yeah, the direct oxygen.
Yeah, he looked at those for Wakefield and Bennett and even costed them out. And I think, and if you remember, we have a Wakefield aeration study started. This is actually leading into that. And one of the things that Keith had been looking at was this side stream oxygenation. The nanobubbles that he looked at for Wakefield, and again, we're going to be revisiting all of this with this Wakefield aeration study. But at the time, one of the things that he found was that it would have been significantly more expensive than this side stream oxygenation. So one of the things about the nanobubble technology is there is scientific reason that could work to aerate a lake, but it may take multiple units. So it depends on scaling is a question, like how big is the water body that you want to oxygenate, and how many systems does it take to put in? So these are things that maybe at the conference, they don't get down to the nuts and bolts of cost, because it depends on the application and it depends on what you're trying to do. So we didn't talk costs in this memo, but I did want to mention, we have seen this before and have looked at it. I wouldn't say we've ruled anything out at this point for that Wakefield study. That's yet to come, but these are all kind of things we've seen put out there. And I'll stop talking. What questions do you have reading through all of this? Did it make sense? Were you able to kind of?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
I'll just kick us off. So I do appreciate the summary. In one of the opening paragraphs, probably the fourth paragraph, as I read it about hey, aeration does have some negative side effects. I'm not quite certain. I try to look it up, but how often do we experience those negative side effects? Just out of curiosity. I can totally see what was written occurring. I just don't know, is the rate of occurrence high, or is it one of those things that, if you do it totally wrong, you're going to see this?
I think it's rare. That's kind of a hard question to answer. It's a valid question. I think it's rare that you see an aeration system that is like done to oxygenate an entire lake, right? Like these are usually done on a smaller scale. So I don't know how many times people are doing this at scale where you'd get a really, really big problem. That said, I think Sweeney Lake had an issue, and that reference should be in here.
Bassett.
Yeah. Was it Sweeney Lake? Is that right?
Yeah. Bassett Creek watershed.
Yeah. So Bassett Creek had an experience where it didn't help things. I mean, I think you can kind of see how it would happen, right? Like especially with a shallow lake, if you're stirring the whole thing up, you might be suspending all sorts of stuff on the bottom and creating a bigger problem.
What I can't tell is, was that a planning issue, or was that like, hey, we're experimenting, see what happens? I don't know the bounds of it. It's just when I did some Google searches, it did see in a lot of the cases the benefits outweigh the cons. So I just was curious.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we would be, for the lakes that we've been looking at for you all, these are the impaired shallow lakes. And so I think the application there because we would be approaching this with internal load management in mind, that calls to question like, well, is there a possibility we could make that internal load worse? So I think that
It's a very
paragraph is
fair
specifically about that.
counterpoint, yeah.
I think there are other benefits. It depends on what you're going for. Yeah. Yeah. What questions can I answer?
I was surprised about the aeration plus the iron
Mm-hmm,
concept. That one was new to me.
mm-hmm.
We haven't tried something like that, have we? I know
Well-
it sounded like y'all did it in parts, but not kind of together is what it sounded like. We've done things with iron,
Yeah.
we've done things with aeration, just not in the same kind of configuration.
Yeah, I mean, iron, if you have iron in lake sediments, then you have the potential to bind phosphorus
Yeah.
if the water has oxygen in it. So sometimes people combine those technologies.
Isn't that what Keith was recommending for Wakefield?
I don't know that he was recommending adding iron. I'd have to look back at that. Did he recommend that?
I don't think so.
I
He
think
recommended
talked about
aeration.
it, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
He thought Wakefield would be a good candidate for some form of aeration. But not necessarily adding iron. He did, I think he looked at, if I recall, you know, the chemistry of the sediments in those lakes to see which ones had high or low iron, which ones had organic phosphorus versus non-organic. So, yeah. What I can say, I wish I remembered this off the top of my head, but what he found in Wakefield Lake sediments versus what he found in Coleman sediments was that Wakefield would be the one where if you wanted to try aeration, that might be the one to try it. Whereas Coleman seemed better suited for alum.
So as I look at this technology, I had a few different questions around, I like the summary. Were there water bodies and locations where some of these should be more strongly considered versus others? So I recalled the conversation in the Wakefield, that was really great. I have a sense that maybe some of these worked, but there was one specifically pushed toward. And I was curious, as you looked at these technologies, did your team say, oh, you know, nanobubbles might be an interesting one to be tried on this lake, or direct oxygen, forgive me, iron aeration might be good for this lake. As I try to put the findings with respect to the waters that we help manage, I don't know enough to match them.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. I think, I mean, for now, I mean, when I think back, what I can't remember is, I know that Coleman, Keith thought alum is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
We've also done an alum treatment there before. That lake responds to alum. And then the nature of the sediments was one that he thought that seems reasonable to do again. For Wakefield, he thought aeration could be an interesting, different thing to do and to try. And that would still be kind of experimental, but that it could respond. It could be a good thing to try. Bennett is the one I can't remember off the top of my head. Am I missing another shallow one, or is it Bennett, Wakefield, Coleman?
For impaired waters.
Yeah, for impaired waters. Bennett, I can't remember. Bennett's a really tough one, so I don't remember what he was concluding with that one.
Which is perfectly fine. I
Yeah.
think as I step back and look, I don't know what it takes to be peer reviewed. I really did appreciate that comments like, hey, you know, we do things based off science. Is there a way that we can partner in the science is kind of what I'm curious about on one of these, not all of them, but one of them.
Yeah.
And if we were, which one would you recommend?
I mean, I think if Keith were sitting here right now, the one he was interested in looking at further was that side stream oxygenation.
And that's what we will be doing. Yeah, like,
Yeah,
what we are doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
and now that I know that I assume the paper that we publish, the publications that we come out of this, we will go through that peer review and whatnot, because it seems like it would help other people. Is that fair? Other watershed districts?
Oh, you mean if we implemented it
Well,
at scale like that?
That's what I'm curious about. It
Yeah,
seems.
so we are looking at it as a research project, right? And he
Yeah.
was gonna set up parameters, you know, to make sure that we had the data.
Couldn't remember all the
Yeah.
information on it, so forgive me. on
Whether or
that.
not it would be.
To be peer reviewed, that'd have to be an outside, like Bar wouldn't review themselves, they'd have to go through a scientific journal.
So what I'm curious about is, do we set it up in that way? Because what I'm gathering here is in what we've done, we're doing things that push the envelope, and is there a way that we can say purposefully, we're going to do these sorts of actions as part of that trial or whatever trial we run to help other watersheds out? Because I think these technologies are only going to improve. I think they're going to be more prevalent. I don't know which one.
Good comment, so, yeah, make sure we're looking with that lens as we.
Yeah. Well, and you know, there's a history of, I mean, Bill and Keith used to put articles out. I mean, that's a thing, and you know, Keith's a PhD, like he knows the drill. So, yeah.
I just like what we've done as an organization. It seems like we push the envelope and we help make everybody else better. Street sweeping is a really good example of it. And so in this particular instance, I think others are going to struggle with the same lack of evidence as they talk through. And so how do we help?
Yeah.
That's the conclusion of my questions. So I'll leave it. I don't have any
Yes,
further
nice.
questions.
What else can I answer?
Well, I'm looking at the table, and one of the things that really just jumps out at me in the table is the magnitude of cost. And it seems fairly comparable, other than this nanobubbles.
Mm-hmm.
The nanobubbles just seems like it's a different technology altogether. But it's not that I'm questioning those costs attributions, because I do think it does have comes with heavy costs. I know when I was talking with the representatives, one of the things that really just kind of caught me is the demand for power. It takes a ton of electricity, so there is the operational costs that I haven't, really heard anybody bring forward. And certainly the point of, if you have, a larger basin, it may require multiple units is something. I don't know, I guess my take, I read through this and I thought to myself, there's a lot here. And I wanted to be able to put more time into it to really. So I'm at kind of a little bit of an impasse. I don't have enough formalized questions at this point, other than maybe questioning those, degree of costs. I'd really like to see a little better understanding of, what a cost estimate might be in a comparable basin for each of these different technologies, because I don't think we've done that.
Well, what we do have is, and we can pull I wish I remembered the name of the memo, but we do have a cost estimate that Keith worked up for Bennett and Wakefield for a couple of different, so for for Moliere and for the,
I don't know that it included the nanobubbles.
it did.
Did it?
It did, and this was a little while ago, so, maybe that has changed, but we did look at it once. I mean, the other good thing is, like, we're not deciding anything tonight, and there's a reason you don't have actual numbers in here. The Wakefield aeration study is a deeper dive on what it would actually take to do aeration in Wakefield, so that's where you'll see actual numbers. But Keith did look kind of a rougher cost estimate. Again, I think it was like 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years ago. So we can dig that one back out again. You'll see some similar things. We were looking at different kinds of aeration. This was just a fresher look at it, so. Yeah. But yeah, it's general. The other thing, to be honest, I mean, we want to be a little careful how we talk about people's products in a public board packet, right? So this is meant to be an even look at what these things are and what they're not, and kind of lay out the general pluses and minuses and benchmark it with peer reviewed literature. So, yeah.
As you continue to learn more, it'd be wonderful, later on in the packet where you describe new technologies periodically. Just say, hey, a new paper was published, if you want to see it.
Yeah. Yep. There was one, I think, one article that was peer reviewed on,
Last one?
I think it might have been, yeah, oxygen nanobubbles for lake restoration. Where are we at? Review of new generation approach to managing lake eutrophication, published in Water 2022. So that's your first assignment.
You go read that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
This was informative. Thank you so much.
Great.
Any other questions on aeration before we jump to the next one? Wonderful. Phelan and Keller Lake level forecast. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, so this is a scope summary that's just letting you know kind of how we're moving forward with this project in 2025. It's got the cost and the schedule there for you. But overall, it's using what we already have with our opportunities to program and control the outlets of Keller and Phelan from our office and from our phones, but then now integrating it with the weather information so that it can be a smart system that can alert us and really be more proactive with the way it operates. So that is the work that's going to be done this year.
I remember when I read this particular one, I think and love this as a first step toward really meaningful automation in terms of conveyance, especially in really challenging years. I'd love to see as this works through. I do find as we approach using data in these novel ways, that let's ensure that as we go through the tasks, we do ask ourselves, you know, what is the fail safe if something does happen? That's really the only adder that I just, not that I'm sure it's in here, just yeah, but I'm a huge fan of using this data practically. We're going to learn a lot.
I'm just curious, how often does staff currently change the levels of control?
Well, we haven't done it a lot because we've had pretty dry years.
How long? I don't even know.
So they've
how long
only
you've
been in,
used it.
they've only been in place, what, 2 years?
Okay.
And we've had 2 dry years, so we haven't really had opportunities to use it to its full potential yet.
It might be interesting to look to the last fall, because I know last fall we got fairly wet, but it wasn't like, it was like a very heavy period of time. I can't remember.
There was a fair bit of flood risk reduction infrastructure that went in right when the drought started. So in response to a wet cycle and then.
Yeah, so we can only operate these, you know, when it's above the outlet elevation for Phelan, and I don't think we've been above that outlet elevation in the last 2 years.
So Dave, I see you're on. How often were you looking at the controls?
The controls, we look at them, I mean, they're right next to my office, so I mean, I can see them often. Don't really pay too close attention to them because we know the weather and kind of what the general feel is for it. But we cycle the weirs twice a year in the spring and the fall, and we have never had to actually operate them because of operating plan due to high water and what's coming as far as rain events. But we just cycle them and make sure the maintenance works on it twice a year.
Thanks.
Do we have storm prediction thresholds that we would expect that it has to, I mean, I assume that the operational plan would have that in place.
That's all in the operation plan. So, but right now we're manually, doing that. And so this will help to integrate that from the national.
What I like is, I know in prior board meetings, we've had conversations about, we're sitting on this treasure trove of data. It's one of the most powerful things that we have as an organization. So we use the data all kinds of ways. It's a unique perspective on how to use it. I'm pretty, I don't know, we'll see where it goes.
It's about 2.5 inches of rain when we have to start operating it. So you can kind of think of it as inches of rain, not just an inch or so.
Over 24?
Say that again?
Over 24 hours?
Yes, correct. Yep.
And how does that compare with the antecedent sort of existing before it?
Right,
Not at all.
so again, it would have to be above that outlet elevation and then get the 2.5 inches. In the area of the drainage area too. And that's
pretty significant.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
And that's where the, now the rain.
Those are really wet years. There's a lot of rain.
Yeah, we've been in those situations, that's why we have it, but, yeah, when we installed the rain gauges, then now we can help kind of pinpoint where those storms are
I,
getting to. So.
I remember some conversation that we had probably after the meeting, but July, June was such a, May and June were really wet. I mean, look at Blue Earth River.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conclusion of the conversation that I came away with was, no, we didn't get even close at all.
Not the same, yeah. And water levels were low, so that it didn't create any issues.
Very cool. Any further questions on the Phelan Keller Lake level forecast integration? Moving to the administrative report.
Yes, so I have my meetings attended and upcoming meetings, and I'll make sure I add in the board workshop for the 24th. And then also wanted to let you know, I think you received an email from Jan today at Minnesota Watersheds about a upcoming meeting that they're scheduling, a board meeting, or a membership meeting, I should say, where you'll have to choose delegates, and we can do that at the next meeting to see if anybody is able to attend. It's on March 21st in Wake Park. And the purpose of that meeting is to adjust the bylaws and mop for Minnesota Watersheds to change the resolution process. This came out of years of discussions about having a better resolution and legislative platform kind of process. And in order to do that this year, they want to start the process in April, which means we have to make some changes. The membership would have to approve those changes to the process in March. So Jan's going to put out, more information for you all. And then at their next meeting, I'll be asking if we have any delegates that are able to attend the meeting.
Do you remind me, is that a remote allowed attendance? It's in person
It has to
only.
be in person, yep. And it's like at the annual meeting, they have to have at least 45 delegates in attendance for voting. So they'll be asking for RSVPs, to make sure that they can get a quorum.
I haven't read Jan's message, but it seems like, gee, is this an opportunity that, does it have to be done now, or is it something that can be pushed off to another meeting that, the annual meeting, or possibly the spring tour, summer tour?
It depends on, so right now, and it has to go to the board, the Minnesota Watersheds Board yet, so this is kind of preemptive, like, just save the date. It's gonna go to the board, it must be at the legislative event, they have a board meeting, so the 19th. But I think the intent is that they want that process in place for the next legislative session, which means they have to start in April. So I know they consider that it might be hard to get enough delegates there, but that's the goal, would be to do it. So look for that email, and then we'll have more information next month as well. I realize this is 2 months in a row now. I didn't even include the board action log, so I apologize for that. I hadn't made any changes to it, but it did get missed again this month.
May I ask you on the, was there any update on the Lower Phelan Creek? Writing
Project update. Yeah, we met with them. They're still moving along in their design process. We anticipate them submitting a permit application by the end of May, probably for board approval in July. Ahead of that, I anticipate that they'll come back to talk to you about maintenance and operation of some of these things, but they have been responsive to our concerns about some of their design elements. So they are making, I would say, positive changes in their design. So we felt pretty comfortable actually after our last meeting about moving in the right direction for that. So thanks. So that was good, but they did say that they would like to talk with us about operation and maintenance of both the outlet and the connection to the outlet.
Tina, you just reminded me on something else. We typically have a closed door meeting sometime in February. Is that correct?
For my performance review.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
is that a new date that we should
So
figure
we
out how to set
should,
up?
I should connect with them and get that scheduled.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
I
So
just,
I'll connect
it
with
was
them.
something I had missed.
Yeah.
Um, I'll bring it up now. We were just on the topic that Stephanie raised about the, what we're doing. We're also doing the inspection of the belt line. And I'm just curious if there's any aspect of that inspection while we're in there that is taking, closer look in areas that the
they might
belt line
intersect.
might intersect.
Yeah, so they're not gonna be tapping in directly to the belt line. So that piece of it is
Not necessary.
not necessary, but we do, I mean, when we're inspecting the whole thing, right? So we will be inspecting that section, so we will have that data available. Ready to move on to the DEIA planning process. So I had invited Caitlin from Strategic Diversity Initiatives to join. She unfortunately was sick tonight, so she was not able to attend. So I'll help us talk through the process and what we're looking at here. I anticipate there might be some questions or concerns about just with our current state of DEI discussions in the country. But I did want to talk through that with you all as well. Mary put together this timeline. We've been working through a lot of DEI efforts over the last years, starting, 2013, as we talk about our targeted retrofit program. We were focusing on certain underserved parts of our district. But then really in 2021, we started the initiatives for staff development and have continued that for number of years. We've done our website audit, our building audit. Accessibility is important to us. As a government agency, I think it's important that our resources and our time and our staff are accessible to our constituents. So we've done that work. And then the next step in our planning efforts was to invite us strategic diversity initiatives to help us create a DEIA plan that would look at what our next initiatives would be, and it'd be like a 3 to 5 year plan. Part of that would be inviting community members, community groups, our partners that we work with, our leadership, staff, bring everybody together in a workshop format to talk about what we're doing well, where we could improve, what kinds of things our partners would be looking for us to be doing in the future. And then having a kind of a menu, a plan that we would hopefully incorporate into our watershed management plan as well. So the timing was to do this so that it could be incorporated into that plan as well. That's the overview on that. Happy to take any questions, concerns, thoughts.
Something I've been very proud that we consider as we plan things. So I'm excited about the workshop.
I was pleased to see the width and breadth of the efforts. I see it as something that is valuable. We live in a fairly diverse community area. I guess as I read through these blocks, there were some that it was the audit, for instance, was kind of stating, yes, we did this, but there wasn't really any conclusion or report on what the findings were. Did we pass the audit? Are we all in good shape?
So for both the website audit and the building audit, there was a whole list of things, and they have a wide variety of range of priorities and costs, and especially with the building audit, there was, I would say overwhelmingly it was positive, but there were a number of items, some easy ones that we've already taken care of, and then there's some bigger things on there as well. And I can share that with you guys so you can see that information. Website audit, we've done most of the updates. We're still working through some of the like PDF attachment kind of issues that come with accessibility, and making sure that everything is meets those standards. But Otherwise, the rest of our website stuff has been updated.
I guess the other thing is, it's not clear to me if there's a kind of a comprehensive plan in a sense of, you know, cooperating with other organizations. There's a number of examples there. Some internal work within, you know, among staff, working with some outside groups for assistance. And it's all very good, but I didn't have a sense of the framework within which all of this is packaged.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where we're heading. What we need next is that framework. So a lot of those things were things that we kind of grabbed, you know,
Sure.
and we're working on and continuing on, but, you know, hiring SDI to do some more audits of our policies and procedures, and then working on this plan so that we do have a framework moving forward is our goal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I was just curious, I mean, you've obviously been dedicated to this process for a while here. And I was just wondering, in this next year, as we look to do the update the watershed management plan, what aspects are you will help us specifically kind of communicate or engage, you know, traditionally, you know, less engaged communities or individuals. So
part of working with SDI is helping identify those communities and reaching out to them and inviting them to the table. And so that'll be part of this workshop, and then as we develop the plan, we'll still be, you know, communicating with those communities. But it does intersect, and so Lauren is heavily involved in that too, because we're also working on our public engagement for the watershed management plan, and we realize they don't work separate, really, they work together. So, you know, we'll be using both of those efforts to reach out to those communities.
I know us as a board have talked about those different socioeconomic boundaries and classes and getting participation in those. And so, yeah, their voices is important.
yeah, I mean, having, you know, some of the things that I've been involved in personally have been including food is always important. Daycare is always important. You know,
Daycare,
close
yes.
to some sort of public transit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we are able to do that.
Yeah, for this, specifically for the SDI workshop that they're looking at, we're gonna be doing that one online. So that we can hopefully, and, you know, foster an opportunity for people to hop in. She said, you know, it's not like you have to be there the whole time. Like, if you can only be there for a certain amount, well, there's a lot of opportunities throughout the process to receive information from people. So if they can only be on for an hour, then we want them to still come and hop on for an hour, but if they need to leave, they need to leave. But we did decide to do that one online for that particular one. Now the outreach for the management plan and the intersection of the two, I think we're looking at it more in person. And like you said, yeah, going to them and not having them come to us. Yes, food and daycare.
Okay, and so then I'll ask the other question. So will we have measurable changes in terms of, I don't know if you track demographics of people who came to the last one, but it would be interesting after we've made this investment to see if that's actually.
Yeah, I think
out.
we would definitely be able to quantify that, qualify it.
Thank you, Tina. You want to talk briefly about the legislative event?
Yeah, so I included some information here for you. It's the agenda for the event, as well as the talking points that Minnesota Watersheds provided. And then I asked Emily to put together that list of representatives for your information. But I would like to hear from you all and how you would like to move forward with this. And everybody might have different feelings on how to go about that, as far as connecting with your representatives. whether it's in person or with information. One other thing I was gonna mention, and I forgot to have Lauren include this, I don't think she included an example. But we've been working on a new brochure essentially with our map on it and our, information about the watershed, things to use when we're tabling. And I'm hopeful that we could have some of those for you all to share with representatives as well. I think that would be a good tool to use.
Are we supposed to, I mean, is it better practice to contact them ahead of time to say, hey, I'd like to have some time with you on the day of blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, and I think, so we have this day, but really if they're not available, you could really set up time with them anytime, it wouldn't need to be on that day.
I mean, are they all supposed to be there in their offices waiting for you? I mean, I've never done this.
No, unless you made some prayer.
Yeah, so you definitely have to make prior arrangement, and my feeling is that, many of them aren't even at the Capitol right now. But they might be willing to meet in their local office or.
You had asked about how y'all could help us, and in truth, it'd be wonderful if people have some time Thursday and we can align on a time Thursday to show up, one or two of them together. That would be really quite nice.
Yeah.
I just don't know, just to build on what Stephanie has said, like, it would be helpful if you could help us arrange some of those.
Sure.
But I don't know if people are available on Thursday. I know I'm very interested in trying to attend or at least meet Fisher. I think he's been on for a while. I
Yeah,
think
he's been
new.
around a long time, and he's the chair or co-chair
He's co-chair.
of the Environment Committee for the House Democrats. So I think he would be a very good one if you
I can't remember his counterpart too. It'd be nice to, because I also heard he's quite a champion of water things as well. I'd love to see if
remember who
I have it written down in my spiral. I can't recall.
First of all, I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it. I wasn't able, I didn't respond, when the invitation came out, for other commitments. But I am very interested in trying to follow up with both, Peter Fisher and, now I don't remember the senator's name. But one thing I was gonna point out, Val, I think you and I both have the same senator. It's listed as, I have somebody different. But I looked it up and for the record, it's the same person, then your person is listed correct.
Yeah, that's correct. You're right.
So I was hoping that we could have some discussion, other avenues, we write emails, can we introduce some of these topics? Very said that it would be, certainly acceptable to ask if they would be available, at some point, even not that day, because I do have some conflicts. And so I guess that's kind of the direction I was personally hoping to go.
I think that's a complete, it never hurts to talk to people more than once.
Yeah.
So I know I try to block up my morning is kind of what my goal was. And so far I've been successful. So if there was one in the morning, I'd like to do it. But if we can repeat, somebody else go, that'd be great too.
Yeah, and it might be, if they're not at the Capitol, you might be able to meet with them.
A caribou or something.
Here, if you wanted to invite them here or something too, we could do that.
That might be nice.
Yeah. I know, Representative Fisher is very familiar with us and we've worked with him on some other project stuff over the years, but I think it's important for all these, representatives and senators to know who we are and the area that we cover and the, kind of top priorities of our watershed in particular. And then also, as a member of Minnesota Watersheds, here's our top priorities legislatively that they may see come in front of them. And that's looking through, chloride contamination, and then also the, working with our state agencies on permit review periods. So I guess, so if,
It's, you know, I appreciate the talking points from the Minnesota watersheds, but I will say it's still, the first part I understand is kind of the history of what we have, what's been presented through the legislature. And I personally am still trying to digest what that last bullet point is how to develop the regulatory approach to reducing chloride contamination. So I've seen several recommendations. I mean, there was one that says, you know, and I don't even know if this is regulatory, but in one, can't even remember where this came from, but it was a potential letter to your representative. And it says several points in smart salting, you know, support the smart salting training, you know, address the actually misleading packaging, misleading labeling on salt. You know, the pet safe, salt-free sort of things. I don't know if that's regulatory, if that's even under their purview. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm not quite sure what.
I think what they're referring to there is, you know, supporting us, like organizations like us, to have a regulatory approach. So right now it's education and outreach kind of approach, but would we, for instance, have something in our permit requirements that requires applicants to develop a chloride plan?
So similar to the maintenance plan that they have to include.
Okay. And 9 Mile, I believe, is doing something like this. 9 Mile, I think, is the one that has it built into their permitting program. So that's the regulatory approach. And they also then, I think they regulate like cities, and they do permits for salt storage and, you know, things like that.
That'd be an interesting thing to look into later. As like
Yeah.
best practices across the state. What do they do?
Right.
That helps things.
Yeah.
One thing that I guess on the salt, on the chloride, topic, it is clearly that intersection between safety and overuse. And that's the smart salting is certainly trying to address that. But I would also raise, in addition to the overuse, the availability. It's just, you know, readily available, widely available. And I think in terms of the tobacco, alcohol kinds of industries where there's been either regulation, or in the case of tobacco, there have been, you know, significant increases in prices, in part due to taxing. And I'm wondering if that's anything that has ever been you know, discussed, brought forward, you know, percentage of sales tax of salt products. We might not even have a tax on it, that could go into some of the water quality funding. I don't know if that's anything that's ever been suggested or not with Minnesota Waters.
I haven't personally heard that, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been discussed. I think there's, a lot of pretty creative ideas, but I'm not, you know, and that's where this limited liability, I mean, it started to get some legs, and then
Right.
more than nothing, so.
Well, the gentleman from New Hampshire, and what I've heard as well, is that one of the big concerns was actually the record keeping. It's a lot of work.
Sure, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, we'll keep at it.
So do you think it would be helpful for me to reach out with your, you know, with CCing, or would you want to reach out?
It would I do not believe me just reaching out is going to have the same effect as somebody who, for example, Peter Fisher, just being specific. I think the response you might receive versus mine would be different. So I would like to ask for you to help reach out. If there are other times or maybe people who we can invite here, especially as we talk through the Water Fest, like, oh man, let's make sure they attend Waterfest for sure. But for this one event, the near term one, I might ask for some help. And then I would encourage y'all to work through Tina, but if you have a better relationship with your representative, then please, leverage it. I don't have one.
Yeah, I have more of a relationship with Peter Fisher than I do with Vincent. I know Peter, I've worked with him in the past.
So that's good to know. So you might be able to reach out directly and then set up some time, caribou here, whatever. But yeah, for the events, Tina, I'll just work with you off that.
Okay. Stephanie, what are you thinking for your
I know them, I know them visually.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, I mean, and they probably know me the same, but we haven't actually had deep, long conversations.
Yeah. Do you plan to reach out
I
Thursday?
I will,
Thursday?
I'll actually use the watershed email and just send a note. See what's up, see what's possible.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's actually a good point.
The watershed
It would be
email.
Better to see watershed email than person.
I always use the watershed.
Yeah.
See, I was thinking about using Gmail. That was right. So, yep.
I always use your watershed. Yes.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you so much for the update. I have only a couple questions on the project and program status report. I'm really passionate about the manufactured home work. I know it's been a busy month, but love to see some additional content there as we develop that, because as I get to know those families more, for the population.
Waiting to hear back from a grant we applied for that we should know next week. Really see that.
Cool. My son has many friends who live within nearby manufactured homes. Okay, my next question is on D. This is getting all back to stakeholder engagement. I know it's a big focus point for most of us on the board. So any notable feedback on some of the exchanges that you've had in terms of the partner engagements?
Yeah, the Public Works Forum was well attended. We did get a lot of really positive feedback.
Cool.
It was a really interesting meeting because, we were providing a lot of information, requesting some back from them. And we have some really engaged cities that are looking forward to the process.
Really excited about that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and so we do have some notes we need to kind of synthesize through yet. And then we can share those with you all too, probably as part of the
February
workshop too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting always means something.
Yeah, I know
I think
that's
what was interesting to me is that they were very outwardly thankful that we are seeking their input. And I mean, it's required as part of the process, but this isn't the first time we meet with them, right? Like, this is something that we've set up for, 20+ years. We've had Public Works Forum meetings where we pull our cities together and get this feedback and get this dialogue. And it was clear that that was appreciated, and it was really nice to hear. So even from someone, I would say are people that have been critical, maybe not of us per se, but just questioning, as they should, kind of what we've been doing. I find they're real champions now for the work we're doing, so it's fun to. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, they were just, they were really thankful. It was, there weren't like critical things. It was a little more like, please don't stop doing the assistance for pond dredging.
Yeah.
We really love that.
There was a few of those, like, these are the things we want.
We really want you to continue these things.
The flood risk reduction work too came up quite a bit. So.
Emergency response plans.
So it was good participation from essentially all of the.
Yeah, we
cities,
were
or
just
not?
missing Maplewood, which was weird, but
That's
that must have been a last minute.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cause they had planned to attend, so something must have came up.
And we
but-
partner very closely with them.
Yeah, yeah, so I don't think that was any, they'll be involved. I would anticipate that. And then like, I don't think landfall or jump lake,
Yeah.
we don't get a lot of jump lake. But otherwise, I think you're
Thank you.
right.
My next question's on G.
Yes.
It's more of a comment than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lake residents have taken notice on some of the changes and benefits, so I do think there's a thank you here that I wanted to lay out. I like that we're continuing to refine. As we refine and get better data, I'm curious and Dave doesn't have to answer it now, but I'd love to hear, hey, what are some additional uses for that data as we pull it together? That's all. It's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly monitoring water levels.
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah, and
drainage
publishing it,
and-
it's really helpful.
And yeah, having that available for our residents and for staff to keep a closer eye. And then as we talked about already, the automation of the Keller Phelan that will be used that way, as well as eventually the Battle Creek Tanner system as well, so.
I just see the story forming of collects doing some of these really important, impactful mechanisms. So
Yeah, the data is used, in all of the flood risk reduction studies that are done as.
Tina, if I could add to, personally, I get reached out to by city engineers from like Oakdale, Shoreview, Vadnais Heights. They all directly use that data. So it has some pretty far-reaching impacts there.
and I'm not, this might be many years down the road, but like, is there a can we monetize that pathway at some point? Not that particular one, but just as we think through it and grow our data sets, because data is powerful. That's my last question.
I do have pictures and video from the Beltline repair project. If you want
Like today, yeah.
Yeah, well, I have a question just a comment, I think, on Q. So, just because that's the pond dredging. It came to mind because every once in a while I tune into the U of M stormwater seminar. And so several times they've mentioned that there's a growing concern that aging stormwater ponds may be actually leaking phosphorus. So is this a concern for us as well? And is it changing or affecting how we maintain or maybe design as we go through these the series that we've got now and those in the future?
Well, I will say, so the ponds that are being dredged as a part of Q, I mean, the CAP stuff that's going on right now are not necessarily targeted because of internal loading. However, the district now it feels like many years ago, did do a comprehensive study, like using modeling to figure out which larger ponds, stormwater ponds and wetlands throughout the district are probably loading quickly with sediment, relatively quickly with sediment, and which ponds have the greatest impact to downstream water bodies to help target these are the ponds to watch over time. It doesn't necessarily mean these are the ponds that need to be maintained and in this order, but it means, hey, St. Paul, Maplewood, North St. Paul, here's your list of ponds. Here are the ones that the district is particularly concerned about. And you can, use this to help prioritize your inspections. So that information has gone out to the cities. And sometimes we do see ponds come through that are ones that, that we know about. Because yes, it is a concern. We don't have monitoring data on all of your ponds, but from time to time we do isolate a certain pond and monitor it and suggest changes. But yeah, that's a thing. I mean, those ponds, that is the beauty of assisting your cities to maintain them, because if they don't get maintained, they don't do what they were designed to do. So, yeah, that was kind of a multi-pronged answer, but,
So the cities
Yeah.
are actually, they're the ones that are determining the sequence.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
And they're the ones doing the testing for us, or.
Well, we do the testing for them, but they.
of the sediments, we mean the water quality.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many cities are testing ponds. I think that's kind of the rare exception, but
Yeah, and we've done a few when we've done field
Yeah.
studies to try and identify some of those hot spots, but
Mhm.
we don't do it as a regular practice
Yeah.
here. Just
Yeah.
trying.
it's definitely, it's on the radar. It has been looked at through modeling before. Yeah, yeah, it's a concern.
Alright, were you gonna talk through these?
Well,
images
yeah, these are
or-
just, sure, yeah, these are just from today. So we, some of these photos are just photos that Nathan Campo took out on site today, and some of them are drone photos, and we even have a video if it'll play from a drone. So these are obviously from a drone. So what you're seeing here, and Dave, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, do you wanna tell folks what they're looking at, or do you want me to try to do it?
Well, you can do it. You're there. It's easier for you to do it. This is
Okay.
just, it's the outlet pipe.
Yeah, I saw the pipe. So if you remember, there was a, yeah, today was a good day. There was a metal pipe in this area, and over time it had rattled around, it gotten banged around by barges, spots, and then there was a big sinkhole in this area that is industrial. And it's land owned by the Port Authority. So as you know, very big, expensive project to replace this section of pipe. I think it's like 70 feet, 80 feet, something like that. The plan was to replace it with an equal sized concrete pipe. And had to be replaced because it couldn't be lined, because we needed every bit of hydraulic capacity as possible. So what you're looking at here is, this is from the river. So this is looking at a cofferdam there that's blocking water so that they can put the new pipe in behind it. So there's people like standing, right behind that cofferdam.
Oh, and they're pumping out the water.
You see that, yeah, the water on both sides is the bypass. So there is water that's coming from the belt line. I mean, it drains essentially, or a big part of it. They're bypassing that flow on either sides of the pipe. So there you can see, yeah, people working right in there. That's one section of pipe you can see right there. I don't know how many sections they got up to today, but it was a pretty productive day. This was the first day that these pipe sections were going in, and they had to fit them down through the openings here, and they kind of wiggled them down with the crane and carefully set them. So it was a pretty,
That's tight.
they were very, very excited that there was a board meeting today, because they knew that some of these pictures might get seen.
Maybe you
So,
can see the size of that pipe too
Mhm.
compared to the guys sitting.
Yeah.
So everything is precast.
Mhm.
How do they seal those joints? Or don't they?
Dave, you wanna take that one? How are they sealing those joints?
It's basically they fill it up with concrete. They're going to, as of now, they're kind of submitting some stuff with the other back and forth between AMI and bar, but they'll probably just put a piece of sheet metal behind there or steel, and then they'll mud it up with concrete, and that'll be the more or less the seal that's going to go up there. As I understand it right now.
So it's grouted, is this?
Yeah, grout. Yes, grout and steel.
Yep. So that was the hard part, going from that
Yeah.
outside the outlet, now moving up.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier on, that first photo, well, you can see it there, those tiebacks.
Mhm.
There was some discussion about that.
Mhm.
You can really see how tight there's.
Yeah, you can see why that change order came through like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's the river. Garrett said he had some fun shooting this drone footage today. There's several. Yeah.
I bet, whatever, they moved my office space not too long ago, and I have a great view of the river going down barges, and there's just, I think there's like 6 or 8 cranes right now. There's a couple near the airport, and I was looking the other day with binoculars. It's like, I wonder if our crane is operating so that
Yeah.
it's ways down.
So anyway,
Cool.
This is really
Had some
cool.
hot off the press pictures that
And they are on schedule.
they are,
They're done in March, basically.
Yep.
And I hope you find ways to put that on the site.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, Bar was planning to do a post about it on LinkedIn for
very cool.
sure. and,
Oh, yeah.
We'll definitely be sharing that as well.
So
Good stuff.
wonderful. Any further questions on program updates? If not, let's move to manager comments. I don't have any further comments. If people have things, let me know. My only, I'm sorry,
Program updates for
Yeah.
natural resources or?
Yeah, forget a few. I don't have,
Oh, we have just a comment on communications and engagement, going back to chloride. There's something from MRUC and its partners saying, they now have, there's a link that you can use to report excess salt.
Oh.
So if that's, and it's a link that they were hoping that, its partners could share via website and or social
Sure.
media.
Mhm.
So, and I've asked, so what? You report the form, you report,
Mhm.
so the location, and then similar to what 9 Mile has done, they send a postcard.
Oh, okay.
So to that particular facility. So if that's something
interesting.
that,
Yep.
that we might be able to do.
Yeah, I'll share that with Lauren. I'm sure she's seen it, but I'll talk with her about it.
Okay, thanks.
sorry to skip your question. I tend to do that. Any other questions on program updates? Thank you. Manager comments. The only thing that I would encourage y'all to do prior to the board workshop. I found it very nice to sit down and summarize, 10 years that I've seen, and then write down, well, as I look forward to 10 years, what does it look like? And so I have some thoughts. So I'm encouraging everybody who's going to participate in the workshop to actually come with some thoughts. So it takes some time. Think through.
Yeah.
And
We'll see if we can probably send out something ahead of time too.
yeah, for some homework.
Think about,
Um,
things to think about.
Yep.
I have a video from a futurist that I found extremely helpful to help think 10 years down the line. And I'll talk to you about that. Today.
Yeah.
Who's the futurist?
I have to look at my notebooks. I'm
Okay.
so bad with names. He was actually in San South Africa when I saw him. Fantastic presenter, but he has a really good set of videos. So, last thing is, Matt, you will be missed. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
You too.
Good
What
luck.
are you gonna
in
do
your
with your Wednesday
endeavors.
evening?
Fill it up somehow.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Someone?
Second. Awesome. Let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Yep.